George, did you have fun? I had a lot of fun. He's awfully cute. Lydia is filming this for me, and she had a great time petting him because he is such a cutie. Yes, you are. All right, so this is his roadmap to success. We want to talk about a lot of puppy stuff in this one because he's obviously a puppy. We're going to go in inverted order. At the end of the session, I actually pulled out a treat ball. And can you reach over? It's in my bag. Can you just reach? We might have a little shaky camera work while she's doing it. But basically, one of the things I like to do is teach the dog to work for their food. In the wild, dogs spend 90% of their time looking for food. You see how he's interested in it. This has a hole that you put the food in, but it's got a sleeve. So he's got to roll it just right for a couple pieces of kibble to come out. So at first, he was like nervous, kind of like we were talking about the video above. But after a couple minutes, he started nudging this thing around. After a while, it looked like a soccer player. This allows dogs to basically work for their food, which makes them feel better. It slows them down. Most dogs eat super duper fast, and that can create some throwing up and some other problems. And this also creates a real strong desire to want to chew on appropriate chew toys because they distribute food. Chewing on like this chair right here does not distribute treats. And so once he learns that, then he's all about it. As you can see, he already got one meal out of this, but he really got into this. So when you get these, if you're going to feed your dog out of these, you want to make sure you teach your dog a leave-it exercise, something we did off camera. And when you're doing training, you always want to keep your training sessions to 1 minute to minute and a half, multiple times a day. Dogs file away what they learn when they sleep, so ideally your dog should take a nap or sleep in between practice sessions. So basically, I like to have 3 different versions of this. I have this one. I have one that looks like a dumbbell where the hole is on the outside. The dog has to flip it end over end. I have one that's more of a part pyramid. There's some like puzzles. They have to slide it over, and then they can get the food that's underneath. This helps with your dog's problem solving, and it actually can increase their intelligence. So I usually like to do this for the first couple months of the puppy's life that I have the dog myself, usually month 3, 4. And for me, at month 5, I could leave my puppy out in my living room and leave the house, and he had no desire to chew anything else other than appropriate chew toys because they're the only things, you can see he's into it, that distributed treats. It's kind of the same principle for potty training. If the dog potties inside, they don't get a treat, but if they potty outside, they get a treat. So they start to hold it because they want to do it in the proper way to get the attention. Yes, his guardian just left the room, so he's a little bit antsy. Now these guys, like I said in the earlier video, are a little bit anxious. Now he grew up on a farm. Yes, I know, your buddy's going to come back here in a sec. That's all right. And so because he was on a farm during a critical socialization period, he's fine with other dogs, but he's not very, he's a little bit anxious around other people. So I'd like the guardian, especially since we only have a couple more months, well, a couple more weeks probably at this point, of good weather, is to walk around in the old market and places, which he already does, but put an emphasis on as much as you can for the next couple months. If somebody wants to pet him, instead of saying, sure, say, would you like to give him a treat? And let's see if I have one. I don't. But what I do is I use this hand motion, go over their head. Once they sit, lower it, let them lick it off my hand, and then I tickle underneath their chin, and I say the word sit. Then I would hand the person a treat. They would do the same thing. So after a while, I'm going to make sure that they make the dog sit. A lot of people just give the dog the treat. So tell them, oh, you got to make him sit. And then basically what he learns is if I just go and sit in front of a new person, they give me a treat. That teaches him good manners, so he's going and sit in front of people, so that right now he jumps up. It also helps teach him to trust and look forward to meeting new people. They're not to be feared. They're people here to give you treats. Yes, I know. Yes, you're a cutie. What?
Oh, no, you're fine.
So basically, yes, we don't mind that. So basically, the more the exposure and experience that we can get him, the more confident he's going to be. You won't see the dog's true personality until they're about 6 months. He's 5 months now. And then you really want to make sure you put an emphasis on socializing them until they get to be about 9 months. Now, we're in Nebraska right now, so in a month or so, it's going to be so cold out, we're not going to see very many people. There are a couple indoor options. Lowe's and Home Depot are both dog-friendly stores. Obviously, most pet stores are also dog-friendly. If you go to the World Herald, I write a column for the World Herald's Omaha section. They actually have a list of places in Omaha that are dog-friendly. Usually, if it's a restaurant or they're serving food that they prepare, you can't have a food. A lot of times, if it's packaged food, they will allow it. But sometimes there's malls that you could take your dog to and places like that. So right now, because we're about to change the season, get him out as much as you can. The more exposure you get, especially doing the exercise that I was talking about in the other video about touching his collar or just sitting in front of new people will help him develop good manners. Now, I also went over, he was looking at the fish. Isn't that an awesome fish tank, by the way? I was commenting on this to the Guardian. And I've seen a lot of fish tanks. This is impeccably clean. So I'm giving him some props to it. He's over here laughing, but he deserves it. Most of the time I see fish tanks and there's crap growing all over it. All right, so I went over some ways to use positive reinforcement to reinforce the puppy behaviors that we want. One of them is what I call petting with a purpose. So that means we're just going to ask the dog to sit before we pet it. We're going to refrain from petting it anytime it gets excited or starts to jump up or engages in any other behavior we don't want. Remember, you have a window of 3 seconds to correct or reward your dog for them to start to make the connection that takes a lot of repetitions. So if every time you're petting him and he jumps up on you and you stop petting him, after a while he'll learn to stop jumping up. Or if you're petting him and he puts his paw on your hand like this and you immediately stop petting him, this is dominance. So as soon as he does that, stop petting him. Excited is not happy when it comes to dogs. A lot of people confuse the two. So the dog gets excited, or we come home from work, the dog's jumping around. These guys are all sorts of full of energy, and we pet the dog. Well, anything your dog is doing when you pet it is what you're enhancing and rewarding and reinforcing. So if your dog is a little bit more, every time you come home, he's excited. Every time you pet him, you're going to make him slightly more excited. At the end of a week, that's maybe 1 percentage point more excited. At the end of a month, maybe that's 4 or 5 percentage points. And it's nice to come home and have somebody freak out. We have 2 brothers that live together. I doubt that either one of them is like, dude, sweet to see you. It's normal. But when our dog does it, if we pet and reward our dog, then they're going to continue to do that because we're teaching them this is the proper way to ask a human to pet you, is to be excited or to jump up on them. Instead, we want to teach them to have good manners, to sit, come, lay down, do whatever it is. I usually don't recommend teaching a dog to shake until it's not a puppy, because for dogs, if you like this, you must really like this. So petting with a purpose is just something asking. The dog nudges me or scratches at me, I tell it to sit. When he sits, I pet him under his chin. Remember, when a dog feels good about himself, his nose is elevated like his is. And so we want to pet him under his chin. We just want to avoid patting on top because you see his nose is going down. You can scratch his butt, you can pet him anywhere you want, but if I'm petting or reward him, I'd prefer to pet him under his chin. And we're just going to say the command word, not good sit, not good boy, not George sit. Yeah, I know your name is George. Just sit. And that leads me to something I call passive training. Well, and then remember, if you come in the room and you see somebody's petting the dog and the dog is not sitting, we say paycheck. The other person stops petting the dog. We say sit. When the dog sits, we pet it under his chin, say sit, and then we can say, actually I asked him to sit before he came in the room. When he heard you coming, walking, he stood up and I continued to pet him, and David said that's okay. Or the dog has to prepay. If he comes and sits in front of you, then you can reach over and pet him. And we should reach over and pet him and acknowledge that and say the word sit. The more we do that, the more he's going to be inclined to engage in those behaviors. Let me see, what else? Passive training is something we went over. Passive training is basically rewarding the dog for desired actions and behaviors. I'm just laughing because Lydia's gradually tilting the camera. Anyways, so for passive training is every time he comes to me, I'm going to pet him and say, here. We used to say come, but I think the guardians might have added a little extra baggage to come. So we're going to just change it to a new word. Every time he comes to us on his own, we didn't ask him to, we just pet him and say here. After a while, he starts to associate here means I just come to a human and they're going to give me some attention. Same thing with sit. Every time he sits, pet him and say sit. He has a problem laying down, or he doesn't do it very often. Every time he does, reach over and pet him and say crash. And make sure you say it consistently. Don't say crash. I know you like it that way. We want to say just crash, consistent. You can say it crash, but you need to always say it the same way. Also, come up with a list of command words. Most people use a bunch of versions of the word, and it makes it harder for the dog to understand what to listen for. Come here, over here boy, whistle, dog's name, snap my thigh, and a nickname. Now the dog has to listen for a whole bunch of words as opposed to come or here. So write a list of what the command words are. Make them one-word commands, preferably one syllable. But one syllable is not necessarily a requirement, but just make sure that it's a unique word that doesn't sound like another word. And I like to use fun words. Dogs are the only animal that can read a human facial expression. So come up with something that's humorous as opposed to saying down, I say crash. People laugh. My dog feels happy about herself. That's why I give my dogs a naughty dog name. If they're doing something I don't like, I say Rufus. When he's doing the right thing, I call him Quest. So come up with a kind of ridiculous sounding name, because when you use it, you're not going to be happy with your dog. Let me see, above, and then right up above this, if you're looking at this write-up on my website of doggoneproblems.com, the write-up directly above this is for a Siberian, Alaskan Malamute named Flora, and who has a big problem with the kennel. Actually, similar problems to what he has with the kennel. So in that video, in that write-up, I have a very long, I think it's 13 or 18-minute video where it talks about how you can get your dog to enjoy being in the kennel. A lot of tricks. Some of the tricks would be, we might take a marrow bone, drill a hole through the frozen marrow, and then zip it really low in the kennel, but in the back here. So the dog, and we leave the door open. The only way the dog can actually chew on the marrow bone is by being inside the kennel. We leave the kennel in the living room with the door wide open. So At first, he'll go lick it and come out, lick it and come out. This is why we don't want to use the dog as the kennel as a punishment zone. I know, we're almost done. Yes, I appreciate that. But this way, the dog goes into the kennel and gets something positive. He practices being calm inside the kennel. Yes, I know. He's such a cutie, but he's like, I've been sitting for 10 minutes and I never sit very long. I'm in Boston. So let me see. So using the motion or using things, positive things in the kennel can help. Also leaving like a marrow bone in there or a treat. So every time he goes in the kennel, something good happens to him. Or another trick is to put the marrow bone in the kennel and close the door with him outside the kennel. Create a longing for him to want to go in there. Now you shouldn't really kennel your dog for longer than 4 hours maximum, unless you'll get him a little bit stressed out. So one of the things I suggest is the guardians might want to go get a puppy playpen. If you go to my website, go to doggonproblems.com/quest, and there's a button you can click that says start from the beginning. On the first page, it talks about setting up, preparing for the puppy before it comes home, and it's a picture of a playpen. Setting up a puppy playpen is great because you can attach it to the kennel. The dog, and they would put a mat in the kennel, so the kennel is the only soft place. And the door is wired open. And this way we can put the dog in the puppy playroom. It's full of a bunch of toys like this, well not necessarily like this, but a bunch of high value toys that the dog really likes to play with. So if he doesn't want to sleep, he can run around and play and do what he wants to do. If he has an accident, it's not a big deal, it's contained. And then eventually he'll start sleeping in the kennel because the door is now always open, and that's the only soft place to sleep on. This way we have a safe place we can put the dog. We don't have to worry about him getting in trouble. And the guardian has a job that works longer hours. And so we want to make sure that if he gets into a situation, he does a good job of making sure somebody's here. But you never know. Something might happen, a snowstorm or something freaky, and we can't arrange to have the support we normally do. Having him a puppy playpen will go a long ways towards giving him a good option. He might get signed up for our 301 puppy class, which is loose leash training. We didn't have enough time to get to that in the session because we went over things like the leave it exercise. Now you can continue saying leave it. We did this off camera. I would suggest one word command. I like ignore, but we can use anything. And you can continue using leave it. But again, I like to use one word commands. I showed you the leadership exercise on the floor. I didn't go through all the details of that with the guardian. If you want to practice that with your dog, message me and I can send you a link to a video that explains how to do that. Make sure that you're enforcing rules consistently. One of the rules would be the dog's not allowed to be on this carpet. Now, if he's not on this carpet, we don't have anything else in the place that's soft. So if the dog kennel is not here, we may need to make sure we have a dog bed. If the dog bed's over there, that's really cold, we might need to move it over here temporarily. The dog's just not allowed to be here when somebody's eating food. For dogs to be within 7 feet of anyone who's eating is very disrespectful. It's a way of challenging. So we'd like the dog to be outside of the room when we're eating food. But when we're eating food, he could be there fine. When they're cooking food in the kitchen, he's not allowed in the kitchen. The rest of the time, he can go in there fine. I make a dog sit before I let him in or out of a door. This is something I forgot to go over with the client in detail. What I do is I go to the door and I say sit once. And I tell the dog, I don't ask the dog. If he doesn't sit, then I tell him, then I walk away. I'm controlling what he wants. He wants to go outside. Don't do this when you're potty training your dog. But the rest of the time, for dogs, whoever is in front considered the leader. Whoever's behind is considered the follower. So make sure that when you go to the door, you tell him to sit. If he doesn't sit, walk away, sit down on the couch, wait 1 minute. Ask Siri to give you a 60-second timer. After 60 seconds, go back up and tell him to sit again. If he doesn't sit, this time I walk away for 2 minutes. And he should sit within 2 or 3 seconds. And keep on doubling the length of time. 1 minute, 2 minute, 4 minute, 8 minute, eventually it's 16 minutes. As soon as his butt hits the ground, open the door and let him out. So he learns that if I want to go outside, I have to mand. I have to sit down as a way of asking for it. And after a while, what will happen is he will go to the door and sit down as his way of communicating, I want to go outside. The guardians need to make sure that they're eating before they're feeding him. Even if it's just 5 bites of a tiny little cracker, that's all that's needed. But he needs to see that the humans eat first. Otherwise, he doesn't think the humans have the same authority as him. That's another reason why he doesn't think that they can listen. He has to listen to them. Another rule would be not being allowed on the furniture. For 30 days or as long as these problems are still going on, and then furniture only with an invitation and only for good behavior. Now remember, if he gets up on the couch, we're going to put our hand, we're going to say off once. Within 3 seconds, if he doesn't get off, I'm going to put my hand firmly behind his butt, push him firmly to the edge so he feels like he's teeter-tottering. And then when he jumps off on his own, we reach over, we pet him and say the word off so we can use a positive association and build a command word for getting off of the couch. Remember, it's always easier to grant more access later on. If you have a puppy, I would recommend you don't allow them the furniture at first. You have your dogs for a long time. You can always give them more later, but it's hard to give them access to the couch and then take it away and not have them want to constantly go back on the couch. And for dogs, the higher they sit, the more rank or status they have. So that becomes a problem. Use the escalating consequences to disagree with the dog. Don't put him in the kennel anymore as a punishment. If we have to, put him on a leash timeout. If he is being a really nuisance, take him away from whatever it is. Increasing the distance can help the dog relax and calm down. I'm trying to think what else. For the feeding, try to get at least 3 of those toys. Do that for about a month and a half, 2 months. And then, the carrots. Make sure you get a bunch of carrots, freeze them, because he's right now going through some teething. And so this way he can chew on those frozen carrots, and that will help numb his gums. Also, anytime that he touches you with his teeth, he's not doing it now, but he was mouthing earlier, it's important for dogs to develop bite inhibition. They learn that by biting too hard and having the other dog, ah! That was not a good yelp, but usually when the dog touches me with his teeth, then I give it a, ah! And you saw he froze, I froze, I wait a second, then we can go back to doing what we're doing. I would like to get you to have a rope or something you play tug of war. Get him riled up. And anytime his teeth touch you, yelp and stop playing. So he learns, if I want to play with a human, I better never lay my teeth on them. He's a little guy, so he's probably not going to do a lot of damage, but we don't want him to do that for anybody. We want him to have good manners, right, buddy? All right, am I forgetting anything? I think I'm about... Lydia always laughs because these are usually a little bit longer than I say that they're going to be. This is George. This is his roadmap. Oh, one other thing. Kissing sound is an affirmation. Oh, 2 other things. So we went over the recall exercise. So we changed it from come to here. So if you watch him, it looks like I have something in my hand. So always deliver your treat like this or as much as you can. Now when I start going down, the lower you go, the more it's for the dog. So watch here. So the lower it goes, the more he's interested. So to put him in a sit, I go in an arc over his head. As soon as he sits, I lower it, let him lick it off my hand, and then I tickle his chin and I say the word sit. Remember, just the word sit. And the more that we do this, then eventually this hand motion means come to the human and get a reward. So when you're doing this, make sure that you're doing this multiple times with the treat in your hand. If you do it without a treat, after a while, I was like, I'm not falling for that. Now, I only raise it over their head to put him in a sit. If I say come once, or here as the word will be, and what we're doing with him is transitioning. We say come. If he doesn't come, we make a kissing sound like this. Then start lowering your hand. Go to the floor if you have to. You'll get eventually to a distance that's low enough. The lower you go, the more accessible it is for him. Eventually, he'll come over to it. When he comes over, raise it over his head, put him in a sit. As soon as he sits, lower it. Let him lick it off your hand. Give him the treat, or let him lick the treat first, then say the word come. Even though he's sitting, the more difficult thing was coming to me. So I'm going to reward the more difficult activity. So use that and practice that. It's best to practice with at least 3 people. I practice it with everybody about 7 to 10 feet away. Then everybody has about 5 or 6 treats. Then practice the next time when maybe somebody's sitting over here, or somebody's in the kitchen. Eventually somebody's beyond line of sight. We want to get it set up so eventually he's got to come and look for somebody. He can't see them and go and find them. That's a great way to help him develop a strong recall. That and passive training. Every time he comes to us, we're going to pet him and say the word come. Or excuse me, his case, here. All right, George, one more time. This is George's roadmap to success. Remember, everything you do trains your dog. Only sometimes you mean it.